where we left off yesterday, we are going to go back and erase and figure out what works. And we're going to try a 2. We tried -2. We didn't try positive. So bring down the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. This is -3. This gives you a -6, which gives you a -15. All right. So do we have our signs right? 1, -5, -9, -5. Okay, let's see. This gives you a -30, which gives you a -35. The book says it does work. The book is wrong. Okay, so we spent the last 5 minutes figuring out what the book did wrong, and what the book did wrong is this 9 should be positive. So let's all make this 9 positive. And if this 9 is positive, here's hoping. The 2 actually works. So let's bring down the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. This gives you a -3. 2 times -3 is -6. This gives you a +3. 2 times +3 gives you a 6, which gives you a 1. 2 times 1 is 2. This gives you a -6. And 2 times -6 is -12. Oh, sweet Jesus, it's 0. All right, so remember, this is my remainder. This is my constant. This is my x squared, x cubed, and x to the 4th. Now, we're just going to use these numbers right here. Well, I would like that not to be good. We're going to use these numbers right here. And since it's an x to the 4th that you can see, we're going to synthetically divide again. And since I know what should work, I'm going to put a 2 there. 1, -3, 3, 1, -6. We're going to drop down the 1, and we're going to find another 0. All right, so here we go. 1 times 2 is 2, -3, and 2 is -1. 2 times -1 is -2. This gives you a 1. 2 times 2 is, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6, and yet another 0. Remember, this is my remainder, my constant, my x squared, my x cubed. All right, so I know that we can't factor by grouping, so what are we going to do? We are going to synthetically divide again. We're going to synthetically divide, and we are going to use these numbers. They're going to pop right down here. So 1, -1, 1, and 3. I'm going to synthetically divide by 1. Why? Because I know the answer. So drop down the 1. 1 times 1 is 1. This gives you a 0. 1 times 0 is 0. This gives you a 1. Oh, maybe the 1 doesn't work. Wait, we might have to go back. It's a -1 that works. Oh, so sorry. Sorry, let's erase that. That's a negative that works. Sorry, maybe I should read my book a little bit. I'll be okay. So this is a negative. All right, so drop down the 1. 1 times 1, -1 times 1 is -1. This is -2. -1 times -2 is a +2. That gives me a 3. -1 times 3 is a -3, which gives me a 0. All right, that gives me x squared minus 2x plus 3 equals 0. I really wish that was a -3, but it's not. So since it's not a -3, since we can't factor it, you have to do the quadratic formula. So you have x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times a times c. Well, even if I squared -2, it's going to be a positive.
Oh, yeah, it's negative. Okay.
Yeah, negative opposite of b. So negative and negative is -2. So x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 12 all over 2. So x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of what? -8 over 2. So x equals 2 plus or minus 2i square roots of 2 over 2. Now, let me just tell you that the things that can reduce are these 2's. They can reduce, and what you get is x equals 1 plus or minus I square roots of 2. So that's 2 of your zeros. The other ones come from right here. You have an x equal 2, you have an x equal another 2, and you have x equal -1. So these are your zeros. And we would have never been able to do this problem yesterday if I hadn't figured out that they made an error in their sign. So yeah, there we are. That makes more sense. Can continuing with example 2, we need factors of our 20 over 1. So that's going to be 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Remember, these are all plus or minus. All plus or minus, right? And we have to synthetically divide, but we don't have to put any space holders in because all of our 4, 3, 2, 1 is there as far as our exponents. And I'm going to tell you, so we can get through this, that one of the factors is -1. So we're going to put 1, -7, 13, 1, -20. And hope the book didn't get signs wrong. So drop down the 1. -1 times 1 is a -1. This gives me a -8, +8. This gives me what? 21. This gives me a -21. This gives me a -20. This gives me a +20. Yay!
Is it always, if you know like all of your
One is in this book and answer a lot, not
I'm
always.
not saying one, like I'm saying if you like just pick a random X.
You mean one of these X's?
Not one of those like this 0.
Yeah, well that has to be one of these numbers up here.
Oh,
From your
like, yeah, but like
That's why we give you that list, because these are the only numbers in the universe that work for this problem. Now they all don't work.
well, like how we get like the one answer like the X.
Yeah, those are the imaginary ones. So there are still 5 answers in the last problem. Some of them are imaginary. But these are your real solution choices. Alright. So then you take the 1, the -8, the 21, and the -21, and you synthetically divide again. And we synthetically divide, we are going to use 4. So drop down the 1. 4 times 1 is 4. This gives you -4. 4 times -4 is a -16. Oh, it is. Thank you. Thank you. Before I even got there. Alright, my bad. So this is going to get you a 5. And 4 times 5 is 20. And so this gives you 0. So we have x squared minus 4x plus 5 equals 0. Which can't be factored because if this was negative, it could be. Since the 5 is not negative, it can't be factored. So you have to do the quadratic formula. X equals the opposite of b, which is a +4, plus or minus the square root of -4 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a, which x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 20 all over 2, which is x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of -4 over 2, which is x equals 4 plus or minus 2i. When you have the square root of -4, the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of a negative is I, so the square root completely goes away. And then you simplify 2 plus or minus I. So that is a 0. X equals -1 is a 0. X equals 4 is 0. We need 4 solutions, and we have 4 solutions. Okay, so we've been finding zeros from an equation or a function. Now they're going to give you the zeros, and you have to find the function. So we're doing the exact opposite. We're going to be multiplying. And what you need to know is if you would be given a plus bi as a solution, you also have a minus bi. They come as a set. They're pairs. They can't have one without the other. Just like if you had a plus the square root of b, the other part or the other piece of that is a plus or a minus the square root of b. They also come as a set. So in this book, they're only going to give you one of them and hope that you're smart enough to realize the other one exists. All right, so when they say write the polynomial function of the least degree that has the real coefficients of 1, -2, and 3 plus I. This is really what you're saying, is you have x equals 1, you have x equals -2, you have x equals 3 plus I, but you also have x equals 3 minus I, because when you have one, the other one comes along. There's a set. So we're probably going to have a degree of 4 solutions, degree of 4. But here's how you set it up to solve it, right? So minus 1, x minus 1 equals 0. Add 2, x plus 2 equals 0. Minus 3 minus I minus 3 minus I. So this is going to look like x minus 3 minus I equals 0. This is going to say minus 3 plus I minus 3 plus I. This is going to be x minus 3 plus I equals 0. So these pieces right here are going to be multiplied together. So you're going to multiply them together, and I'm going to write it as x minus 1, x plus 2. And then x minus 3i, this is where don't write it as 3i, x minus 3 minus I times x minus 3 plus I. Now, as a method to my madness, I'm going to break this into, let's multiply the first two, then we'll also multiply these two, and then we'll do a second multiplication. So we'll multiply the yellow group together, and then we'll multiply the purple group together, see what we get. This is just, what? Foiling. Just foiling, and you guys know how to foil. So x squared minus, plus 2x minus x plus minus 2, doing too fast. So x squared plus x minus 2. Perfect. Put parentheses around that. We're going to have to multiply that in a minute. But let's take our time on this one. First, we take the x. We multiply this x by everything in here. So it's x squared minus 3x plus xi. Then we take the negative 3 and we multiply it by everything in the second parenthesis. So negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. Negative 3 times I is a negative 3i. Then you take this negative I and multiply it by everything in the second parenthesis. So negative I times x is negative ix, or xi, either way you want to write it. Negative I times a negative 3 is positive 3i. And negative I times a positive 1 is a negative I squared. This is going to have to be simplified. So let's reduce or cross out anything alike. Let's simplify. All right. Positive xi and a negative ix are the same thing with opposite signs, and they cancel out. Negative 3i and a positive 3i have opposite signs. They're the same term, and they cancel each other out. So now all the i's are gone except for this I squared. Well, if you remember, I squared is negative 1. So I can say this is gone and replace it with a negative 1. But negative times negative 1 is going to give me a positive 1. So what we have here is x squared minus 6x. And then this 9 and negative 1 is a positive 10. So I said this 9, negative 1 is a plus 1. That's how I got this 10. All right. Now you'll see that all our imaginary numbers have gone away. And then you just have to multiply again. So x squared times everything in here gives me x to the 4th minus 6x cubed plus 10x squared. X times everything in here is plus x cubed minus 6x squared plus 10x. And then negative 2 times everything in here is negative 2x squared plus 12x minus 20. Then you combine like terms. So our final answer is x to the 4th. Let's see. Negative 6x cubed and a positive 1, that's a negative 5x cubed. And I just like to put a little line through what I've used to keep myself organized. 10x squared minus 6x squared is 4x squared minus 2x squared is 2x squared, and it's a positive. And then 10x and 12x is a positive 22x, and then minus 20. This is my answer.